By the way, Troy Aikman finished third in the Heisman. I think that was Barry Sanders' year. Troy joins us on the program. That's a tough one, Troy. You know, Barry Sanders as the Heisman winner.
I was the Malcolm Perry in 1988.
you weren't that mobile.
Yeah, no, I was not. And I'll tell you, when I got there to New York, Barry Sanders could not be there for the actual presentation. He had a game in Japan. Oklahoma State was playing in Japan, and I asked him the day before, I said, so nobody knows other than whoever counted the votes who won the Heisman, huh? And they said, no, nobody knows. I said, oh, that's interesting. And I walked in, and Barry Sanders' entire family was occupying the auditorium, and I wasn't asked to even bring my mom and dad. So I said, I think we know who won this one.
Did you?
Not that it was a big surprise anyway.
Yeah, I tell people, one of my favorite quotes was when Barry Switzer was talking about facing Barry Sanders, and he said he told his defense, do not hurt Thurman Thomas, who was starting over Barry because they were worried Barry was going to come in as the backup, and Barry Switzer was really concerned about Barry Sanders.
He was totally right. I mean, hey, an interesting story, Dan, was I was at the Kodak All-America team before my senior year in Miami, and this guy comes up to me and a buddy who are sitting there having lunch, and he says, hey, do you mind if I sit down and have lunch with you? I said, not at all. And he says, I'm not even sure really why I'm here. I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, I'm just a kick returner. I said, well, you must be a pretty good one because they asked you to come be a part of this, preseason All-America team. It was Barry Sanders, and he went on and, of course, won the Heisman Trophy, had no campaign behind him. It was pretty remarkable, and I can tell you, I saw him in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. He's the same guy today as he was the first time I ever met him before he had ever even done anything at Oklahoma State. He's the most unaffected superstar I've ever been around.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I always bring that up about Barry Sanders, and the other person I bring it up about is Dale Murphy, the former Atlanta Brave star. These were two quiet, humble superstars, and you would never know it. If you didn't know who they were, you wouldn't know what they did for a living, and they wouldn't tell you. But if you watched Barry, he didn't need to say anything. He certainly said a whole lot by just the way he ran. And the fact that he didn't even – I don't know if he knew how great he was, because I would say, boy, look at what you did to that defensive back. He goes, yeah, I should feel bad about that, right?
Yeah, and he certainly didn't want to talk about it. And we played him on Monday Night Football one year, I think in 1993 or something, and he traversed the field a couple times. He wound up, we couldn't tackle him. He finally went out of bounds and gained about 2 yards. And I was standing there on the sidelines next to Jason Garrett, and I said to him, that might be the greatest run I've ever seen in my life right there.
And it was for 2 yards.
It was for 2 yards, yeah.
You had the game with the Cowboys and Rams. We'll get to the Cowboys in a moment. The reason why the Rams are not going to the playoffs is because what?
Well, they just got – first of all, I think that the struggles that they had in the offensive line obviously had some things to do to derail their season and some of the issues they had on the offensive side of the ball. I think they came on – just a little bit too late. But the other part of it, we had them back early in the season on a Thursday night at Seattle, and they had a chance, it was a Zerline missed field goal that would have won the game. And had they have won that game, the season looks entirely differently, other than the fact they went into yesterday's game against the Cowboys. But I will say this, that it's been a disappointing season, of course, for them when you go to the Super Bowl, and then most likely they're not going to make the postseason. I still think they're a really talented team, and I think they're an extremely well-coached team. I've been around Sean McVay, and he's as good an offensive mind as I've ever been around, and I don't worry about them. I don't worry about Jared Goff either. I believe they'll be right back in the thick of things next year.
Yeah, but my concern is here's Sean McVay having this realization epiphany where he goes, you know what? I don't know what I was thinking. I should have been running Todd Gurley more.
Yeah.
It feels this was load management, it felt like, Troy, NFL style.
I agree. I totally agree. And I don't know that, but I totally agree with you. I think that they have a lot invested in Todd Gurley. They're on the books for him at least until 2021. With the new contract, I think they're trying to manage him. He's still, capable of being a really good player, and he has shown that. But I believe last year, based on what happened and how he wore down and trying to deal with the knee and manage that as best they can, I think he had the right approach. And I think Sean one of the things that they really like about him, they being the players, is that he doesn't come out publicly and always say the things that probably should be said with regards to players or who played well, who didn't play well. Sometimes I think players need some of that, but I think when he says, "Hey, I was an idiot," and that's why Gurley didn't get more touches, he knows exactly what he's doing with his personnel, and there's a reason behind everything Sean McVay does.
Troy Aikman, the Hall of Famer, he'll be on the call with Joe Buck. Dallas at Philadelphia next Sunday for the NFC East title. All right, explain to me where this Cowboys team has been all season long, the one we saw yesterday.
Well, it's been a hard. They've been an enigma. I mean, it's just been hard to figure this team out because when you prepare, if you hadn't seen them and you're just preparing for one particular game, or if you're looking at their numbers, you'd say, "Wow, how is this team 6-7?" And it is difficult to figure out. You can't put your finger really on any one particular thing, I guess, with the exception of special teams. I mean, special teams has not been very good all season long, but there's been games, New England being one, New Orleans being one, where the defense came out and played exceptionally well. And then there's been other games like Chicago where the defense has struggled, and then there's been other times when the offense has failed to get it done, or they put up a lot of yards, but then the missed field goals. I know the 2 weeks against Buffalo on Thanksgiving, Chicago, if they simply made field goals, it would be an entirely different game, at least going into the fourth quarter. Instead, you miss a couple field goals, and then they score a touchdown. All of a sudden, you find yourself in a huge deficit, in the second half, and the game plan changes to some degree. And so it's been a head scratcher. But I said it yesterday during our broadcast, and people might laugh at this if they're critics of the Cowboys, and I certainly could understand it, but they're capable of playing like they did yesterday, and that is a good Rams team. And I don't think there's a team in the NFC that wants to face the Cowboys if they're playing as well as they're capable of playing. And maybe, you can say that about anybody, but there's very few teams in this league, Dan, that are really good on both sides of the ball, or at least capable of being great on both sides of the ball. And this is one of those teams. They just haven't played very well until yesterday. Yesterday was obviously their best performance against a good football team, and who knows? I mean, they as crazy as it sounds, what I've seen of Philadelphia the last 2 weeks, even though they've won, has not looked very good. I mean, it's looked really bad. They beat bad football teams late in games. It's going to determine everything next week. Of course, then Philadelphia, if they win, they've got to go win in the final game of the season. But if Dallas gets in, they're capable, if they hit it at the right time, doing some damage, and who knows where it might take them.
But it feels like Jerry Jones is still looking at Jason Garrett saying, if you don't get to the NFC title game. Do you think that's fair?
Well, that was the expectation coming into this season, was that for some reason, I don't know. I don't think Jerry Jones ever said that Jason had to get to the NFC Championship game, but he said we should be better. So better, since they went to the divisional game last year, meant to everyone else, well, they must make it then to the NFC Championship game. The way the season has gone, it's been tough. It's been tough on Jason. He's obviously a friend of mine. I've known him for 30 years. Is it time to have another voice in that locker room? I think if you polled everybody, they'd probably say yes, as we sit here right now, even coming off of a huge win against the Rams. But this story hasn't been written yet, but I do think that he's going to have to at least get to the NFC Championship game for him to keep his job.
You're on record, I think, last week as saying that you'd like to maybe explore a job in the front office for a team. We were wondering, do you have a resume?
Oh, I got a great resume.
Is it printed out? Like, did you go to Kinko's, or do you just take pictures of your Super Bowl rings? Like I'm going to have to see a little bit more, Troy.
Yeah, no, I think most people would. I mean, I don't know what John Lynch's resume was either, but to say, do I want to be? I guess you could say, and I'm reluctant to even have that discussion, and I have been over the years, because there's probably not any former players that wouldn't say, oh, yeah, I'd like to work in the front office sometime. And yet I went into this TV role, and it's been great for me as a single father for many years and raising my girls. And it afforded me an opportunity to be able to do that. And I knew that at some point, now I've got a junior and a senior in high school, and so the opportunity potentially could be there. I'm 53 years old. I'm not naive. I laugh at your question about a resume. I don't. I take that very seriously, because I also understand that I haven't been working in a front office for the last 20 plus years, and so there would be a learning curve, so to speak. Will the opportunity ever present itself? Probably not. And if it were to come up, would I actually take the job? I don't know. It would depend on where it is, who it's with, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. But it is a job that I think I'd be very good at, and I think that if my time comes and goes and I never got the opportunity to do that, I think I'd always sit there and question as to whether or not I could have done the job. So that's kind of where it ends. It's not me being naive and saying, "Oh yeah, hand it over to me. Let me show you how it's done." It's nothing like that. I think it's not ego. It's just having been in a locker room, having been on championship teams, having traveled the league for the last 20 years in broadcasting and been around some really great minds and great organizations. I think it'd be interesting for me to see if it's something that I couldn't conquer.
But you made some headlines saying you probably wouldn't do it with the Cowboys. Is that being fair to paraphrase you, that if you had that opportunity?
No. What I said is that it's most unlikely that it would ever. It's unlikely it would happen anywhere, but it's most unlikely that it would happen here in Dallas, just because of the structure of the organization, and of course Jerry being the owner, general manager, and his sons being involved. It's just I think that things are kind of in place as to how that's going to be, and it's been that way for a long time. So I don't think, not only myself, I don't think this is not a criticism. I just don't think Jerry Jones will bring anybody in that would serve in a capacity such as one that I would prefer.
All right. I think the media probably wanted to look at this as you taking a shot at Jerry.
No, I know the Cowboys very well, and obviously, and the structure of it, as I said, has not changed since I was playing. So when I look at the Cowboys and I say, boy, is there a team that I feel that I could help? I guess the Cowboys would be the team that I feel that I could help the most, because it's the team that I know the most, and I know how things are done, and I know how things might be able to be improved.
I go back to, I think I met you, well, I talked to you at Joe Buck's golf tournament, celebrity golf tournament. I don't even think you had done a game yet. And I remember,
right, yeah.
And we were sitting in a conference room, and I was doing an interview.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, can you be honest? Like, that's the hard thing for players because they want to play nice. I mentioned this, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I brought it up. You've mastered it. Like, you got to the point where I don't think you've ever been better. It feels like maybe it's that point where, as a quarterback, you kind of feel like, okay, I understand this. I got confidence here. But I've heard a different you this year for some reason than I have in previous years. Is there anything different?
I've heard that from a few other people, and I haven't felt that I've been more opinionated. I haven't felt that I've been more honest. Maybe situations have come up that have given me an opportunity to say some things that people then, maybe it resonated or struck people a little bit differently. I don't know. I do know this, and I do remember the interview, Dan. It was at Jay Buck's, and it was before I'd ever done a broadcast. And my first press conference, when they paired Joe Buck and Chris Collinsworth and I together, I was asked, hey, can you be critical? And I thought, wow, I mean, I don't know that that's my job to be critical. My job is to be honest. And if criticism is what's required, then I have the obligation to do that. But I think there's a notion amongst the media that as an analyst, you just have to be critical, and they want to hear you bash on the coaches or the players. And I have great respect for those people. I know how hard this game is. But I think as I've gotten further removed from the game, I still maintain a healthy respect for all of those involved. But maybe it's social media. Maybe it's just that you kind of get hardened a little bit, I guess, for lack of a better word, in the criticisms of your own. I mean, I'm not if I'm critical of a call or a play or something of that nature. I get it just as much on the other end myself. You know that as well. And I think maybe you just kind of say, hey, just be as honest as you can and be fair. And that's how I've tried to go about doing it really throughout my career. But I've had a number of other people say the same thing as what you just asked.
I kind of gave you a big compliment there. You didn't really pay it back. So
well,
maybe. I mean, it's a little
Dan,
awkward.
I don't think you've been better ever either. I think you're at your best right now.
I'll take it, Troy. I'll take it. Hey, thanks. Appreciate your time. Tell Joe we said hello.
Always enjoy enjoy it, Dan. Thanks so much.
That's T. Roy Aikman, Hall of Famer, 3-time Super Bowl champ.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.